Welcome back. So glad that you're actually here. So glad that you came back. Uh, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back. So glad you're here. So glad that you actually came back. So glad that you cared enough about yourself to come back. So glad that you want more for your life than you're actually getting now. And you did come back. And so, without further ado, this session will give you some tools. And it's one of those sessions that you'll walk away a little bit stronger than you were when you came here. And I think that that's really the sensation that you want, like every time. And like the first couple of sessions, it's kind of hard to really give you that, or for you to give yourself that. But the last couple of sessions have really been a bunch of tools that you can use. And hopefully, it's through the tools, and not only through the tools, it's through your utilization of the tools that perhaps you see some supremacy over the habit, one, and also that you see that it is possible and that you can do it. And really, the only thing that's stopping you is one, gaining all the tools. We're not totally done yet. And your journey of gaining tools will continue long after the work that you and I do. But as I think about this upcoming session, this really is the meat. So as I've said before, pull out the good old notebook, because notebooks and papers are a little bit better than the best memory on the planet. So the first 15 slides really are reminders before we get into it. This is the battle that we're dealing with. We've created a stairwell of toxicity through small efforts that we seemingly thought had no consequence. In fact, they did when they stacked up over a few years. I don't know how much pornography you've used. So this is just the best example that I could use for an average person, uh, based on their usage. Average is the best of the worst and the worst of the best. So it's somewhere in the middle. And we talked about one of your greatest tools in this process. It's basically learning to use the stop sign. So, as I said, the first couple of slides are reminders. This is a little bit different than what you saw before. So, take a little look and absorb that particular slide. So it's giving you some things to try to not try to understand in terms of what you do in your everyday recovery journey, and as you navigate situations. So one of the first things that you want to do is to start training yourself to delay your urge. Remember, an urge is not an order. And so, as long as you don't react immediately, you're going to train your nervous system that an urge is, in fact, not in order. Unfortunately, right now, your nervous system is trained such that as soon as you get an urge, you've actually conditioned yourself that urge means that you need to do something. Almost like if you were thirsty, you need to get a glass of water. So you need to retrain yourself such that an urge is not an order. And then you need to replace whatever it is that you're doing with something that is positive. So again, you respond to an urge a certain way. It's time to begin to come up with some replacement strategies. We've talked about those. It's for you to work out. Whenever you're triggered continuously as you go through this process, I told you the notebook is your greatest friend, because not only are you going to write when you're triggered, but you're also going to start to articulate the trigger. What is the urge? What is the feeling? What is the sensation? What is it? Because each sensation and each feeling, it has a different action. So instead of, I'm feeling this way or that way, which is general, you want to get specific so that you can attack it a specific way. As I said, and I'll say it over and over again, the recovery process is taking random and converting it into intentional. And you see that's called rewiring, and that takes time. Some of the things that you have to set serious boundaries on at this stage in the game, seriously, is that there's no phone in the bedroom during this period of time. You know, after you get like a year of recovery, you might want to change your rules. This is the nice thing about recovery, is that when you get recovered, you can kind of change some of these hard boundaries that you put in place. But you need to hold the boundaries in place to get over, to get through. In other words, don't let the boundaries off until you can sit there and say, I got some kind of supremacy over this. And most of the time when I hear people, I hear, oh, today's day one. Oh, and then somebody will say, you got this. No, you don't have this. You have this when you do all of the work, when you study all of the studying, when you do the work that's necessary in order to lick this addiction, then you got this. And the funny thing is about this, you got this business. I have a lot of years of recovery, and I have a few years of teaching recovery. And, you know, I don't really think that I've ever said that I got this. I don't even think that's come out of my mouth 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. Let me just add one more time to it. I got this. Yeah, let me show myself. I got this. So that's like 10 times. I don't do that. I don't even waste my time in that, because I got this is not in me doing what I need to do so that I can maintain my sobriety. I got this. That's an ego-driven statement. So you might want to get rid of that. And a lot of ego-driven statements need to be removed because, as I said before, there's a language of addicts. And some of the language that addicts use is ego-driven language. And again, we'll get into language down the road. So when you look at this recovery journey, because it is a journey, and it's a journey that's going to be around for a while, you're going to lick this thing because you're engaged in the journey. And true licking this thing is that there is no relapse and that there is no backslide. That's what licking this is. And it comes from taking a committed journey. And you'll know when you hit that journey, not because you want to talk about it, but you'll know because things change. Your walk will change, your talk will change, as well as your desires will change, and you'll know it. You don't have to fake it or anything. You'll know it. The way that you know where you are as you're going through this journey is through the various check-in that we talked about. Ask yourself these questions daily, continuously. Check in with your accountability partner. Have him ask you these questions so that you're accountable to yourself and to somebody else about how you feel, what you want, what you need, what you're thinking about, and what's going on relationally. We talked about why and all that before. I'm not going to do that. Try to shorten your time so that I don't keep talking about things that have already been talked about. If you didn't look at the other sessions, I invite you to look at session from the beginning, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 that we're on. Do them in the order that they're there. Do them completely. Take your time if necessary. There's no rush because this is a journey. And digest everything. Because the thing is since I got ADD, since I talk the way that I talk in the rhythm that I talk, one thing that I know, when I'm done with this, I would have told you everything that I need to tell you. But the point that I know that happens is some things I just tell you at random moments. Like in one slide, we talked about entitlement. Well, entitlement is your biggest enemy. You don't ever want to act like you're entitled or you think that you're entitled. So if you miss that point, you missed a lot. That's something that's going to make a difference in your whole journey, is eliminating how you want to feel entitled. You're not entitled to anything except for somebody giving you a hard time. Now, that's a little bit of a negative approach, a little bit untrue, but nonetheless, sometimes the same way that you lied to yourself so that you can do things, sometimes it's good to like exaggerate things a little bit in the opposite direction to get you to do good things. So basically, by saying that the only thing I'm entitled to is a hard time, that makes me know that I'm not really entitled to much. And it also allows me to check in with the reality that life's going to give me a hard time. And it's not about the hard time. The hard time doesn't even mean anything. What means something is, what do I do with the hard time? So checking in daily is like, this is just something that you do if you're truly in recovery. And the reason that we check in every day is so that we can avoid the holes, so that we don't have to come out of the holes. Hopefully y'all saw this before. I'm not going to read it to you again, because you want to operate from chapter 5, walking down a different street, instead of keep going out of the hole, around the hole, and all that stuff like that. No, we don't even go near it. We cut it off before it happens. It's so much easier to cut off 5,000 temptations than to have to endure and deal with 5,000 temptations. So I need to get you to learn how to walk around the holes. And then once you smile about walking around the holes, don't sit there, oh, I got this. No, you don't have this. See, while you were spending time getting this and talking about that, you could have looked at how you can improve this, because this is a game of constant and never ending improvement. And I'd be remiss in my duties if I didn't tell you one of the areas that needs to be improved. I'm not going to leave it alone, because of the simple fact that you cannot have an addiction like you have in today's climate without having an issue with your phone. You need to have mastery over your phone. And mastery over your phone is a little bit easier than having mastery over your body and your pornography usage. So you use the mastery over your phone as, for lack of a better term, it's part of your gym to build the muscle of resisting things that you can actually apply to porn. But once again, it's not all about the muscle of resisting things, because the muscle of resisting things is only so good. And so the muscle of resisting things should be used to cut stuff off, and it should be used to put a boundary in place, and it should be used to get a book rather than to be your entire strategy. And so you need to change the whack relationship with the phone and turn your phone into the tool of greatness. Because there's so much that's available out there. There's so much that you can learn, so many different ways that you can teach yourself, so many different ways that you can cause yourself to get back to your best self. There's so many things available on the other side of the phone. It's just that you have to be intentional and deliberate in your pursuit of those things. We talked about shame last time. And shame is a big emotion that you need to learn how to manage. By the way, today's session is about emotions. not only shame that we talked about last time. But shame does have a cycle, and it's part of the addiction cycle. And it's one of the things that you have to get off of. And you might want to look at the last session, because I go into explaining about shame and I explain about guilt. And again, as I said, I'm not going to do all of that repetitiveness when you can take the time and go back and look at the previous sessions, which I had already encouraged you to look at twice anyway. But I will remind you that shame comes from having a whole bunch of guilt over and over again, and then it converts itself into shame, and it takes you making a mistake and it transforms it into you become a mistake. And shame is one of the big emotional barriers that anybody engaged in addiction must overcome. And I don't know why that thing. It will always go without saying. It will always go without saying with me and in this journey, just period in life. It's really important to get a morning routine that supports your best self. I could do a whole 1 hour seminar on morning routine. I'm not going to do that and haven't done that. But what I will do in the simplest form is just tell you, make your morning something that supports your day. If your morning is deliberately designed with activities and functions and things that you do that support your best day, then your best day can come out of that. Because morning is just the beginning of a day, and how you start something, there's a relationship between that and how something turns out. If it starts well, there's a good likelihood that it will go well. If it starts bad, that means you have to play catch up the whole time. It's a little bit harder game to play. So if you started out right, then you gain momentum, and then the momentum can take you through the day. And that starts again with starting out right, doing pure stuff, looking at your Bible, reading positive stuff, taking care of your hygiene, taking care of your nutrition issues, taking care of your exercise issues, those kinds of ways of productivity and positively starting your day. That's what your day is calling. That's what you can give it, or you can give it what you've been giving it. If you continue to give it what you've been giving it, your day will continue to give you what your day has been continuing to give you. So again, since this is all about change, one place you can start is to change your morning. You'd be surprised how much can happen once you grease the slope, once you set it up, once you set yourself up for victory. We talked about your why in earlier sessions. Hopefully you do have a clear why now that's not about somebody else, that's about you and why it is that you want to live a life clean and pure with integrity, sexual integrity as well. This journey is not for the lazy. Lazy is pretty much what you've been doing. Lazy is about the addiction process. Lazy is acting in your addiction. Lazy is what addicts do when they go to like a forum and they type some letters in, and they expect somebody to give them a recovery formula in some kind of text or response, and all of a sudden their life is supposed to change. That's what lazy will do. Lazy will tell you that you don't need to take 12 hours or 15 hours or 30 hours or whatever it is to look at this program a couple times. That's what lazy will tell you. Lazy will help you have a whole bunch of cognitive distortions. Lazy will not have you doing recovery. See, recovery is the opposite of lazy. Recovery is not just doing resistance. It's not a program of discipline. Recovery is becoming somebody who no longer craves what once controlled them. So this business of resisting, this business of having some kind of mastery in your ability to resist something, that's the wrong goal. It's about no longer craving. It's about abhorring what once controlled you. And that comes from building the muscle. And the only way that you're going to build the muscle is by getting the knowledge of that there is a muscle, and how do you build the muscle. And today, what we're really talking about and what we're going to go into is how do you build some emotional muscles, because it's because we don't have emotional muscles that we tend to self-soothe, because of the fact that it's very easy to set us off. We're very quick to want to self-soothe. Now, again, these are our vulnerable areas. We need to have a sense of mastery on them. The S again at the end stands for sad and also stressed. And I've told you, your two biggest vulnerable periods, your two areas that you're going to need to master most is your bored and stress periods. Those areas, all of these need to be mastered, but most importantly, you're going to have to master boredom. You're going to have to master stress. Part of mastering boredom and part of mastering stress is by putting boundaries up on all of these areas, and learning to excuse yourself when you find yourself in these areas, because some of these areas, they find you. Some of them you find yourself, some of them you find them because you don't have a strategy not to find them. But irrespective of how you find yourself there, when you find yourself there, it's time to get out. And if you find yourself anywhere near that, you stop it. Just like when you're telling those lies to yourself. There's no browsing aimlessly. Look, if you find yourself browsing aimlessly, put it down. Find something else to do. There is no room ever for browsing aimlessly. You got to think of from now on that your electronics are a tool. They're a sophisticated device. Now, would you really aimlessly use a sophisticated device? And you got to put yourself back in a time when I was like 5 years old. When I was 5 years old, do you realize the phone that you have in your hand? When I was 5 years old, they would have to make like a 10-story building to house what's possible, the computer power that you have in your phone. So there's, again, that's a very, very powerful tool that there's no room for aimless browsing. And these have to be your friend, self-supporting environments. I've told you before, this is your buddy, your journal and your recording of your life right now. This is going to be your buddy. It's going to show you growth. If you're not recording what's going on, then you're doing the recovery journey lazy. See, anything that's lazy is like the PMO experience. What is the PMO experience? Oh, I can't take any pain, and every one of my needs are fulfilled by this aberrant activity. That's it. That's all I know. That's addictive. The opposite of addiction is connection and a lot of other things. One of them is recording what you do. Reason why you don't want to record what you do is the good old friend cognitive distortion. If you don't know what's going on, then you don't have to change it. One of the things that we do to stop the cognitive distortions and to keep ourselves in alignment is we use the stop sign. You use the traffic light. These are tools. These are tools that you kind of put in your mind. Oh, I'm not going to do that. That's a yellow area. See, because it's when you learn how to control the yellow areas that the red areas go away. Once you understand this is what you're running from. Oh, I don't want to. Okay, yeah. But you can't have this without this. You can't get to yellow without this. You can't get to red without uncontrollable phone use. You can't get to red without taking the phone in the bathroom, etc., etc., etc. You cannot get red without yellow first. So once you start paying attention to the yellow and decide that you can have boundaries, serious boundaries, and you keep changing the boundaries and making them stronger, once you don't hit yellow, man, you're never going to hit red. Now, early in the days, I had yellow and orange right here to make sure I didn't have yellow. But the goal is yellow. See, this is what the addict wants to do. The addict wants to have you focus on how not to do red. That's the addict. Lazy. Let's just, when we get to red, then we'll do something. By the time you get to red, you've already done something. So the recovered person in recovery focuses on this stuff. But you know what? The recovered person, the addict is focused on this. The person recovering is focusing on this. The person recovered focuses on this. So you know what? That's a little bit of a clue. Why don't you focus on this stuff? And that'll get you to recovered quickly. Why? Why is this stuff important? Because this is the chemical dosing that you've been giving yourself. Serotonin to make you chill out. Endocannabinoids to make you chill out. You haven't figured out other relaxation techniques. Oxytocin. It's the bonding. So again, if the opposite of addiction is connection, and addiction douses us with a bonding neurochemical, why would we want to connect with anybody? Kind of see how that's going on? Why would you want to connect with anybody? Because you're already providing yourself with the connection. When you connect with people, especially when you hug with people, this occurs. And then you look at this area, endorphins. What is endorphins? That's endogenous opioids. That's your body makes its own opioids. Opiates. Yeah. Obviously, we know about dopamine. Norepinephrine is hyperarousal. They call it adrenaline. All this stuff is going on, and you've gotten used to it. And so the only way that you have the life that it is that you want is you get used to getting these things other ways in your life and get used to not getting them the way that you've been getting them. Because basically you need all these things. And you definitely need all these things because you've conditioned yourself to get them. So now you need to condition yourself how to get them at more acceptable levels in elegant manners. And that's what this recovery process is about. And this is real. This is where the real addiction lies. And you're getting these things. And you need to figure out a way and ways to get these things from other areas in life. And you need to condition yourself to need less of those things than you need now. We talked about one of the things that the addict does is he has a way of spotlighting the negative and bad. And this really ties into a lot of what we're talking about, because it's by spotlighting all the bad that a whole bunch of negative emotions have the luxury of coming up. And then they forget to highlight the good, which would give them the power to do the next right thing or the next best thing. They dim that. They don't even see the progress that they're making, which gives them the power to do the next right thing. Because remember, this is about an identity shift. And once the identity shift occurs, that you become a different person, a person that doesn't do this toxic behavior. You just don't do the toxic behavior. Last session, we talked about changing your language. There's no such thing as a relapse anymore. A relapse is when the person gives up, just gives up. We're done. We're not gonna try to pursue excellence. We're not gonna try to pursue sexual integrity. We're not gonna pursue any of that stuff. That's a relapse. A slip is because there was a hole in your armor. Your recovery program, it's not up to par. And your slip is revealing that what you're doing is not working. That's a slip. A slip is like a compass. It's showing you that you were heading in the wrong direction. A slip is revealing that last week you let down some of your boundaries. So a slip is data. It's not some big deal. It's a big deal that you haven't been following the program, but it's data. And don't use the word relapse because you've been conditioned already by some flawful recovery strategy. And your flawful recovery strategy is be scared of the relapse. Develop a serious fear of the relapse. Count days and hold your breath. And that's really the strategy. I don't know any other strategy. Except some techniques that you're going to do. What? Pour water on yourself? I mean, if I told you some of the techniques that I've heard some of these people do, it's like beyond ridiculous. That's why I won't tell you. I will not tell you. I refuse. Some of it's just downright sick. What people try to do to prevent themselves from being from doing pornography. Some of it is just I really want to tell you, but I don't want to tell you because it's not really necessary. That's why I'm not going to tell you. So you have to change your standards. Standards determine destinies. Standards are really, I'm not going to accept anything less than. And that's a boundary. And standards rise gradually. And the sad part about it is, for the most part, they decrease gradually. And somewhere along the line, I would say that in order to become addicted to pornography, somewhere in your bank of standards, there's been a gap, and you might want to check that. And the way that you have the gap is through our friend cognitive distortion, which is basically another way to lie. There's other ways, other words for lying. Some of them are R-rated. But you really need to take out the cognitive distortions in your life, the minimizations, the emotional reasoning, labeling yourself. And as I said in the first session, that this is a life skills workshop, which it is. And so that word labeling makes me want to pause, because that's a word that's very commonplace in this culture today. And that's a word that for you really need to eliminate it, because see, a label is it's a gateway for cognitive distortions, as you can see. Once I label something, then I don't have to think about it anymore. That's the problem with labeling. Once I label somebody, I don't have to think about them anymore. And so when I mislabel somebody, I'm not thinking about them. I'm only thinking about what I decided that they are. And since I decided what they are, and I'm always right, I'm never going to see anything different than the label that I've given something. So you always want to be careful about anything to do with the label, because more than likely it's wrong. And why do we label things? It's that big L word, my friend, lazy. It's so easy to label something than to think about what is actually there. I label it, it's already done. So, again, as I said before, this is about maturity, my friend. Feelings, as I said, we're going into emotions today. So now I've started the actual emotional work process that we're doing. Sorry, I got to set it up, but you need it all and you need it more. And there's going to be more than I ever can possibly give you. More. You're going to have to continue to grow, continue to take in information. So even though I'm giving you a little bit more before I gave you what it is I want to give you, you still need more. So when you think I'm talking too much, that's when you need to rewind it and listen more. You need to listen too much. So what's not matured is becoming reckless, becoming what is maturity, shall we say. It's not being reckless. It's being honest instead of hiding. It's learning and knowing your patterns before they own you. And it's choosing the next right action, even when you're emotional. That's what maturity is, and that's the goal. And the trap of where you are is that you stuff your feelings. You don't even know what the feelings are. You stuff them, you jam them down. You avoid the feeling. You avoid it. And then it's there, and then you try to self-soothe yourself. And then it's there, you can't self-soothe. So then you explode and you call it honesty. And then you're waiting for the mood to change before you do anything to change the mood. And so what we're talking about is you getting to a place where you training yourself to change the mood. Because the mood many times is not going to change over its own because you created the mood. Isn't that a nice clue? So since you created the mood, you can actually change the mood back to where it was. And I think this particular next couple of slides are going to open your eyes to some things that you're actually experiencing. And it's actually some things that are more intense when a person immediately decides to just quit cold turkey. And again, if you like to quit cold turkey, that's fine with me. It's just when you do that, you're going to get a rush of stuff that maybe you're not able to handle. And that's why I suggest that people put a limit, that they pay attention to their porn usage, whatever it is, and do an assessment of how much time that they're investing on a regular basis, on the day, whatever it is. You'll find out if you just track it. And then reduce it 25%. If you find that you're doing that an hour, when you get to the hour, that's it, you cut it off. When you get to 45 minutes, you cut it off. When you get to a half hour, you cut it off. When you get to 15 minutes, you cut it off. That's how you reduce. You don't just give, and you don't do it on purpose. You just do it as you're compelled, like you were doing before, but you do put a limit on it, and in steps reduce it down. Now that's the way that I recommend that you do it, and it's spelled out in an actual video that we do. But if you like, you can do it all at one time. You can just say, I quit today. But when you do that, you're going to go through probably a couple months of this. And it's going to be louder than it would have been if you taper. But in any event, when you do get to zero, all of this stuff happens. Your emotions get louder. You're going to find that you're going to be more unregulated. You are. You're going to find that, the urges get louder. You're going to find that recovery gets stronger as your life gets more steadier. And as I said before, stress and boredom are really going to be your two biggest enemies. You're going to have to learn how to manage those, because those are your triggering areas, and those actually are your enemies. We've already talked about bored, loneliness, tired, hungry. There it is. So one of the things people forget about when they try to recover is that your recovery, because you're not doped up, it's going to expose emotions that you've been hiding and jamming down. So you're really going to start to feel emotions. We're not going 4 hours, so don't read into that. It's going to expose triggers. You're going to need to learn how to expose to yourself your buildup so that you can cut it off. And then we're going to come up with a future plan. Because again, without a plan, that's one of the things that was missing, is that the addiction process is about doing a whole bunch of stuff and living a life in a very random, unconstructed manner. And so when unhealthy coping methods are removed, the real emotional condition of life not only becomes easier to see, it's seen and it's heard, and it's seen real clearly and it's heard real loudly, because the numbing is gone. And that's why it sounds louder and it's clearer. And so your feelings don't mean that you're failing. A lot of times people attach their feelings, to failing. You're not failing. Action is going to determine whether you're failing or not. Needing tools doesn't mean that you're weak. It actually means that you're strong. Only a fool would try to do this endeavor without tools. And that's why they go around in circles, because of the fact that this is probably like the top addiction, probably one of the hardest addictions to deal with ever. And to think that a person is given gifts and tools that take people thousands of hours to gain. All this stuff that I've been talking about on these series, it took thousands of hours. That's why I can talk pretty much with no notes, except for the notes on the slides, because of the thousands of hours. And so when you spend hundreds of hours, you get recovery. And you'll learn all of this stuff, and you'll learn all this stuff with clarity. And as you can see here, feelings, that feelings is information instead of something, what it's been. It's been a call to you doing something toxic, versus what it really is it's that you have a need. And when you begin to learn how to elegantly feed your needs, you'll identify the need, and then you'll figure out a way, not a way, you'll already have like 10 different ways. You'll pick a way to fulfill that need. And it always is going to come down to action. It's always going to come down to action. You want to fix this, it's going to come down to action. action, 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 action. And that's where there's nothing in counting a day that has anything to do with action. So again, the things that you have to do, you have to be honest with yourself, even though you don't say everything out loud. You have to listen to yourself and to others. And this isn't a mocking session, as if you hear other people in their struggle. You use their examples to learn. And I would encourage you, as I've encouraged you over and over again, to take notes, listen actively, reflect honestly, and write specifics. And always leave a situation with one next step, one right next step. Because the thing that you need to learn is something that a friend of mine taught me. Sometimes we're focusing on everything that we need to do. And you can only do one thing next. So rather than to focus on everything, why not learn to start focusing on what's the next right move? 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 What's the next right choice? And as you can see there's some lenses. And this is the lens these are lenses that people bring here when they don't know anything, when they're trying to figure it out on their own, when they're doing all that stuff that's going to keep them in the same place next year if they keep doing the same thing. So this is not just about lust, and this is not about trying harder. This is not about trying harder and that the problem starts at temptation. No, it doesn't. Because you could have cut off temptation with a boundary, okay? And it's much bigger than lust. And the biggest thing that I want you to stop saying, oh, I'm trying hard. Oh, I don't want you to even care about how hard you tried. And I know you're sitting there saying, well, what is this man talking about? He don't care how hard you tried. No, I don't. Because you're putting the emphasis in how hard you tried. And the emphasis is how well did you try? You got to try better versus try harder. Do better versus try harder. It's about better and not harder. It's about effective and not harder. So if you're interested in harder, you might be looking at the wrong thing. See, because while you're trying harder, somebody else picked up a book to learn how to do better. So you can keep trying harder while they're doing better. As we talked about before, this is about emotional management. We talked about you have a whack phone relationship. You also have a whack relationship in how you handle your emotions. You do. Don't make you a bad person, but you do. I don't know exactly how that looks, but I know it exists, and I know you need to learn better emotional management skills. I do know that. And better emotional skills is really emotional maturity. And so let's talk about what ain't maturity. First of all, pretending nothing is wrong. It is wrong. Stuffing feelings. Exploding and causing it honesty. And again, what we talked about, waiting for the mood to change. The mood's not necessarily going to change. You're going to change it. You're going to change it because you change your physiology, you change how you're talking to yourself, and you change what it is you're thinking about, okay? You change your position of your body, move, go somewhere else, change your physiology. Move, do something different. You got to change that. One. Number two, change how you're talking about the situation to yourself. And number three, change what it is that you're thinking about in regards to that situation. Any mood can be changed if you do those three things. Change your physiology, change how it is you're talking to yourself, and change what you're focusing on. That's how you change your mood. Just like that. Try it. It works. Been doing it for numbers and numbers of years. It does. I mean, it speaks for itself. I've already talked about what's on this slide. This one here, you got to learn. You got to learn how to deal with that one. And again, recovery is going to expose emotion. When you're not hiding from stuff, when you're dealing with real life, it's going to expose a rawer, louder, clearer, and in some cases more emotionally volatile situation. Emotions get louder in recovery because the old escape lost its power. It's being removed. Real stress now is felt more directly in the brain. It still wants that fast relief, and the gaps become more visible. So the core idea is there's no easy numbing. You're getting more emotional exposure. We've already established you have a low discomfort tolerance, and that is a muscle that needs to grow. We have a low pain threshold that needs to be raised. And then that fourth box there is, as long as when you think about the process of seeking self-soothing through pornography, that has been your training of regulation skills. Unfortunately, that's a defaulted or faulted training, erroneous training. So it's actually untrained regulation skills. And here's what porn is doing emotionally. It might have felt like it's a medication, actually. It produced comfort. It reduced stress. It made you feel connected. It took away the loneliness. And as you can see, that final sentence, that's why stopping this behavior, it says can reveal. No, it reveals a deeper management problem underneath. You used to use it to calm down fast, to reward yourself for a hard day, to escape pressure, and to avoid pain. You might want to take notes of those four things and figure out a bunch of strategies to handle. How are you going to reward yourself for a hard day now in a way that's healthy? How do you escape pressure in a way that's healthy? How do you avoid pain in a way that's healthy? How do you calm yourself down fast in a way that's healthy? You need to learn those things. As I said, I'm not going to teach you everything, but I can teach you what you need to learn how to do. Calm down fast, reward a hard day, escape pressure, and avoid pain in an elegant fashion. You need to learn those things. Now, there's a difference between this and this. I'll let you read that. I'll move to the next. So this is true for anybody, and you can read that slide. I'm not even going to read that one to you. Yeah, stuff increases, and this is the battle that no one ever talks about when they talk about quitting pornography and all that counting the days and all that foolishness. When you stop getting that dousing of all those neurochemicals, your body screams. It's going to scream. because you've been used to something and it's supposed to scream. And that's why you have to develop coping mechanisms. And that's why that's why I always instruct people to do a reduction tapering mechanism, so that you're actually on a recovery journey and you're not, being silly about what it is you're doing. So while you're reducing your intake, you're also getting and gaining the skills to learn how to regulate yourself and deal with its withdrawal symptoms. It's, again, you're dousing yourself of all those neurochemicals. So some of what you feel is actually a withdrawal symptom. So again, it's not about fighting a habit. It's about learning how to handle life without using the habit. The business of fighting the habit, that's not working. You have to destroy the habit. You have to decimate the habit. Fighting the habit, no, that ain't what we do. We fight the habit because we blow it up. How do you handle more boredom? So again, recovery is going to reveal all the gaps in your life. And you have to respond to those gaps. You're going to recognize how your sleep patterns are goofy. Your thinking patterns are goofy. How you manage stress, it's goofy. I've told you 5,000 times. Something happens with honesty that goes away when people are engaged in this kind of behavior. It goes away. And when people start to recover, they notice that their integrity goes up as well. And the thing that we talked about last session, which is the thing that I want you to remind yourself and start to condition yourself on the daily, your feelings are not an order. You've got to stop having your feelings become an order. There's just something you have. Okay, I feel this way. That doesn't mean I have to do this. And if anything, your feelings are an order for something that you can see. This is where mastery comes in. This is where you really get mature, is that your feelings, they used to be in order to do something toxic. But when you really get mature, your feelings are in order to do something to handle your trigger. Like, okay, I'm feeling lonely. Well, instead of using that as a reason to engage in some type of toxicity, oh, I'm feeling lonely. Let me get the phone and connect with somebody. But since I understand life's dynamic, I'm not going to text somebody. I'm going to call them. You see, the texting is a half a connection, which is not a real connection, but it'll make me think that I connected with somebody. So you want to pick up the phone and actually reach out and touch someone. We talked about checking in. You're going to need to check in with your emotions during this process. As you can see, here's some check-ins. When you're snappier than normal. When you feel that you want to be left alone with your device. That's when you're lying to yourself. You're going to have to catch yourself lying to yourself. When you start telling yourself another, oh, I need relief. Oh, I need it. 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 You know, and this word gets used a lot, almost as a lie, because, what do you really need beside food, water, and oxygen, and shelter, and clothing? What do you really need beside food, water, oxygen, shelter, and clothing? See, so some of these needs are actually not true needs. They become compulsions. They start as a lie that evolves into a compulsion. And again, you'll find, as I said, before any kind of acting out, before any kind of red areas, there's always a secret drifting back. And that's what you need to catch, the secret drifting back. And so what you've been doing is you've been asking yourself this question And so I'm going to drop another line from the quality of life box, if you will. The quality of your questions determines the quality of your life, by the way. So if you ask questions like, why do I always mess this up? You'll get answers like, why you always mess this up? That's a low quality question. But if you ask a high quality question, how can I do this in a way that I'm successful and that is effective and that it is in alignment with best practices? You might get a different answer than the answer of how come I always mess this up. So again, the quality of questions, they do determine the quality of your life. So the emotional roots of relapse, we've already talked about it. You already know what they are. Boredom, loneliness, halt, stress, anger, tiredness, sadness. So when they happen, you really have to come up with ideas and things that you're going to do. And this is the kind of thing that you would have in that first kit that I talk about. You'd have a sheet of paper that says that you mark down, what do you do when you're stressed? You got like 45 different things that you do. Shame, when you feel shame. 25, lonely. 20, angry. 45, disappointment. 35, boredom. 100. You've already written those down. They're in an envelope or a folder. And then when you're bored, you pull it out and you got 100 things to look at, or any of those other emotions. See, that's how you do recovery. And the reason why you put it in your first aid kit is real simple. When you are urged, hijacked, you're overwhelmed. That's a form of overwhelm. We don't think that well when we're overwhelmed. That's why you have contingency plans. That's why you have strategies in place, because you don't think very well when you're challenged that way. That's why you have to have contingency plans. And again, as I said, you need to operate in this recovery like you're a general leading your own army, because this is a war and you need to have contingency plans, and you really need to attack it that way. So it's not when I'm angry that, oh, I'm in my anger and now I'm figuring out how to get out of my anger. You don't have the capacity to figure it out then. You have the capacity to figure out how to get out of anger when you're not in anger. And so if you write it down and it's in your first aid kit, you can look at it. But even just the process of writing it down and reflecting it, maybe your unconscious will go bam and tap into it and you can pull it out. But it's so much better to write this stuff down. How are you going to handle this stuff in advance and put it in a first aid kit? So then when you're challenged, it's your handwriting. You've already written down what you need to do. So it's not anybody to argue with. You wrote it down. Some of these triggers are visible and some of them are not. So I said it one time early in the session. I'll say it again. And this, again, is one of those life skills. If I was doing this on purpose, I would have counted them as I do them. But one of the things you need to do is you need to master invisible forces. That's a lot of what's going to determine your success. Invisible. You need to manage the invisible. So this is visible. You can see this stuff. Apps that you need to get rid of, sites you need to get rid of, search patterns you need to get rid of, suggested content that shows up as a result of algorithms chasing you. You know about that. But it's the invisible ones. The conflict at home, the emotions, the unstructured late night time, the lack of sleep. Again, you need to be in the most best possible condition as possible, because this recovery, this is an athletic pursuit. It might not be as physical, but As like you trying to get and join the JV football team or the varsity football team or the NFL or whatever. It may not be like that, but it's a workout. And this is just making understanding triggers more sophisticated for you. And it's a way of you breaking it down and really understanding it. Because again, part of what we're doing is turning things into more intentional and specific versus vague. So if you just feel urge, what can you do with that? If you just feel, oh, I feel emotional, what can you do with that? See, that's part of that random addictive mindset versus the healthy mindset, which is intentional and deliberate, and that you're treating your life the same way that a general or a quarterback or the CEO would treat it. And so, yeah, you got 6 different triggering families, actually, 5, and then you have a spiritual drift. Spiritual doesn't really trigger you, but when you're spiritual drift, meaning you're not as engaged spiritually as you usually are, as you should be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that can actually be a trigger because your spiritual balance has been lost. So I think this slide itself does all the talking. No need for me to talk on that one. I talk about it all day long, but you need to break down what kind of stresses. Stress can be vague. You need to be a scientist and break this down. What is the areas of stress? So if it's school stress, who in the school? And then how can you handle that versus the vague it's school or vague it's stress? Family tension. What is the tension? Is it with brothers, sisters, people coming over the house? What is it specifically? What is the specific social pressure? What is it specific as opposed to being vague? Loneliness. These are healthy answers to loneliness. Reduce your isolation time. Connect with people. Make the phone call. Do more Zoom and FaceTime and video calls in your life because that allows you to connect more with people and be around safe people. You need to learn how to handle boredom. We've already talked about that. That's your biggest enemy. One of them, anyway. Because with boredom inherently has opportunity with it. That's one of the reasons. It's one of those things that brings an element with it. And boredom brings opportunity with it. So it brings an element that this whole behavior thrives off of, which is opportunity. I've told you, it's opportunity, attachment, and some kind of trauma. So this is how you address boredom. You stay on purpose. You move with a purpose. You have goals. Every day plan your goals. I told you in a session before what happened with goals in 1955 and 1977 with the Harvard Law study. They found the people who had goals, 3% of them, were worth more than the 97% of the people that don't have goals. If you don't have goals, it's like going to an airport and asking for a ticket. If you don't have goals, you don't have a destination in mind. And so you end up where you end up is the point. Don't end up where you end up anymore. Your life is more important than that, and you ain't got no more time for that. You ain't got no more time for that. I hope your English teacher's mad at me for saying you ain't got no time for that. For that, not even that, that. And so, yeah, language. No shame language. You don't use I already failed. You don't even use the word failure. Why would that word failure come up? So I can tell you this. There's no such thing as failure, my friend. Another life skill coming at you. There's no such thing as failure. You succeed pretty much at everything you do. And I know you think I'm weird one more time, but yes, you succeed at everything that you do. What happens is you call successes or outcomes that you don't desire a failure. You always get an outcome every time you do a thing. And when the outcome isn't the way you want it, you call it a failure. And when you call it a failure, that's the end. You failed. When you call it an undesired outcome, then what you do is you modify it to make it become a desired outcome, because you tweak it and make it become a successful outcome. So there's no such thing as failure. Failure, what you're calling failure, is feedback for how you played the game. If you played the game sloppy, you're not going to get decent results. And you're calling it a failure when in fact what it might be is you played the game sloppy and you got what you deserved. Pressure checks. You always got to check in with yourself, as we said over and over again. This really is, that's the muscle that you've got to develop. Self-awareness, awareness for moment to moment. Because like the thing is, and this is so much of what our culture is to today, and it's that way because there's a lot of industries that support this and social media and stuff. Just like, let me just do it random. So there's no specifics. There's no identification. You don't understand. You know, we're just doing stuff. And we're moving from the next thing that we're going to do. But when you do this recovery process, which is really about getting yourself back to life, and you were designed to be purposeful, and you were designed to be deliberate. You're not designed to just do stuff randomly, and you're not designed to do that. You're designed to work like a clock. You're designed to work like a car engine. They're designed to work like a purpose. That's the way you were designed. So you need to check in with yourself in these various areas that you see on the slides here. And rather than, trying to change the whole world, sometimes what can you change in the next 10 minutes? What can you take control of right now? Sometimes that's all you need. You feel like, I'm so out of control. Oh, yeah. Make a sandwich. Something you can control. Drink a cup of coffee. Drink a cup of water. Something you can control. Not every trigger is sexual. Some are emotional, physical, relational, or environmental, as we just talked about. And then some are a spiritual drift. We talked about the build-up process in the addiction cycle, and it's real. And that's what happens, the pressure, the shift, the slip. Then you tell yourself a story to make everything that you're getting ready to do okay. Then you put yourself in a riskier situation, and then you just let go and act out. The pressure begins. Bad news, bad grade. Somebody said something bad that you didn't like. Somebody dissed you. Tension in your body, mental noise, mental chatter. Your patience drops. You need relief. Then your mood changes. You get a little bit irritated. You get lonely. Oh, I feel embarrassed. Oh, I'm ashamed. You get a little drained. Moving forward to destruction. But see, when you realize these things are going on, the new way is you start identifying what specifically is going on, and then you come up with an action to take. Versus the old way is, let me find a way to relieve myself. And so the relief, just so that you and I are on the same page, it's mostly through pornography and all this and all that. But it isn't always pornography. See, the relief is like a muscle that you have. So you don't always have pornography for the relief. So let's just get that clear. But it is a relief muscle that you tap into just to relieve yourself till you can get to the porn. So that's why you have to develop a muscle to shift and get out of always seeking relief. Anyway, and the best way to go through whatever you're seeking relief for is to go through whatever it is you're avoiding. So as you can see in the build-up process, discipline weakens. Of course, discipline weakens. Because this isn't a journey of discipline. We've established that 5,500 times, hopefully. The journey, making it a journey of discipline is making it a journey where it's not going to be effective. The word that you use for that, until you hear me say there's no such thing as failure 50 times, the word you use for that is failure. Discipline should be used to discipline yourself, to write in your journal. Discipline should be used to pull out a video. Discipline should be used to listen to a podcast. Discipline should be used to put the phone down. Discipline should be used to reach out to an accountability partner. Discipline should be used to join an online group. Discipline should be used to go to an in-person group. Discipline should be used to write in my journal. Discipline should be used to eat whenever I'm hungry. Discipline should be used to read a certain amount in my Bible every day. Discipline should be used to read a certain amount in my books. You see what I'm saying? That's what discipline should be used. You sitting in a corner, discipline. It's just as foolish as I probably look making all those foolish sounds. It's just goofy. Don't do that, please. And so those, if you look on the right, these are the lies that you tell yourself. This is the lie language. Oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'll start tomorrow. Nobody understands. I understand. Start today. The day's already ruined. See, again, this is you really got to get rid of this. This is that all or nothing, man. And what I'm telling you is when the day looks ruined, that's when you got to pull out that stop sign and shift it, because it's not ruined. But when you open your mouth with this, you're getting a little bit closer to it. You're getting a little closer to this being an order that you put out. Because one of the things that we're going to talk about when I get into that language session is that a lot of our words, you're talking about an order, a lot of our words are actually orders. And the way our brains work, where our brains are actually work and set up to have our words be orders. And this is one of the saddest parts of this addiction process, is that people, I've already ruined my streak. I ruined my streak. I ruined it. It's all ruined. It ain't ruined. How's it ruined? If you grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and slipped and figured out why you slipped and made a declaration that you're not going to slip that way ever again, the day's not ruined. But the old way, I slipped this day. No. Don't say that. It's not ruined. This day's ruined. I'm going to start tomorrow. You'll be so fogged out tomorrow, you won't be able to start tomorrow. So basically, as you get to the usual setup, which is basically your pattern, again, I can't pull out the addiction cycle, or I'll get lost if I pull it out right now. But this is what's going on as we talked about in that section where they're doing all that preparation. This is all that preparation. So this is the stuff that you got to pay attention to. Play attention to. I said that right. Play attention to. This lingering online, this undeliberate online usage, there's none of that no more. You can't do it. Why am I getting online? Why am I online? You got to start asking yourself that question. If you're searching for stimulation, you might want to search somewhere other than online. The phone in the bed or in the bedroom is pretty much a no-no. And you have to, it's a no-no until you get some supremacy over your habit. We talked about it over and over again. PHONE, you've got to get some supremacy over it. You have a phone problem, and that's part of this problem. And until you get rid of the phone problem, this problem stays. Once again, what people don't realize is that we feed, like I said in the story about the wolf. What wolf wins? You got a wolf on this side that says, do the right thing, Joe. Do the right thing. You got the wolf on this side that says, it don't matter, man. You do whatever you want, man. It's okay, man. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Do the right thing. Man, it's okay. It's all good, man. You got this. You can do that tomorrow, man. Just pull out the stop sign, Joe. Oh, don't listen to him, man. That guy don't know what he's talking about. And that stuff he's talking about, it don't feel good either. Over here, where we do what we want to do, it feel real good. You're going to like it too. See? And the wolf that you feed the most is the one that wins. And the crash only happens because you were feeding a wolf and not listening to it. There's always a wolf fed before the crash happens. And sometimes after the crash happens, once again, the quality of your questions comes to play. What kind of questions are you asking yourself? Are you condemning yourself? Are you giving yourself the business? Are you telling yourself all this and all that? Or are you actually doing research? Because your emotions and stuff going wrong is feedback. Again, there's no such thing as failure. There's feedback. For what you're doing equals this. You don't like this, then you change what you're doing, and this changes. So again, run the pattern. Map it out. What happened first? How did you feel? What was it that you didn't stop doing? Or what was the positive thing that you stopped doing? And what could you have done earlier? There's a pattern to your acting out. There's a series of lies that you tell to your acting out. I don't know what it is. We have it on the chart as a 4-step process of the addiction cycle. But, that cycle of you telling yourself all those lies, there's like a pattern of like 20 lies that you tell. And once you start to notice those lies, it starts with a little lie, a little whisper. You can almost barely hear it, and then it gets louder and louder and louder. You need to notice how that pattern's happening. Watch this the next time it happens. Little lie, then it gets louder, 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 then you start to believe it, and then the next thing you do is you act in a way that's inconsistent with what your ultimate desire is. So now again, start researching when stuff is going wrong for you and researching the pattern. What happened first? What happened next? What did I stop doing? What could I have done earlier? And another one is, what am I going to do differently next time? And it's about writing this stuff down. There's a lot of power when you write this down in your journal. A lot more power in writing it down in your journal than going through this process in your mind. Now, me being fair, me being me, knowing that if 1,000 people see this, there's going to be somebody that's not going to want to write it down. Okay. You'll get more benefit out of doing this, writing it down, but you'll get more benefit out of going through than not going through. So even if you don't write it down, if you take the time to look at the steps that happen, you'll still get benefit, but you'll get like 100-fold more benefit if you take the time to write it down.